A reading from the Gospel of Luke. Now Herod the ruler heard about all that had taken place, and he was perplexed, because it was said by some that John had been raised from the dead, by some that Elijah had appeared, and by others that one of the ancient prophets had arisen. Herod said, "John I beheaded, but who is this about whom I hear such things?" And he tried to see him. That's an interesting little story. Interesting because Luke tells it in a very particular way. In Matthew and in Mark, we are given the full, sordid account of John's execution. John's execution by the corrupt Herod, who is out to try and bed a woman, and the head of John the Baptist is not too small a price for him to keep his woman happy. It's a very sorry, very sordid story. And we see in those Gospels the impact that John's death has on Jesus. Luke tells things quite differently. Luke is a gentle writer. He doesn't like ugly, controversial scenes. So he spares his readers the full sorry story of John's beheading. It simply gets referred to in this curious little passage, the context of which I'm sure you'll remember. Jesus has just sent his followers out to proclaim the good news. And they're making a stir. They're making a stir at all levels of society, not just with common people they meet on the ground, but Herod, the ruler, has heard about all that has taken place, and he tries to see Jesus. Now, isn't that a curious turn of phrase? He's the ruler. He could presumably have sent soldiers out simply to grab Jesus and bring him in front of him. But it's more subtle than that. And to understand that, you need to flip forward to Luke's account of the Passion, which again has a very different feel from that which you read in Matthew and in Mark. And in Luke, when the Jewish authorities hand Jesus over to Pilate, in Luke, and only in Luke, we are told that Pilate, recognizing that Jesus is a Galilean, acknowledges that actually he's really Herod's responsibility, and Herod is in town, so Pilate sends Jesus to have an interview with Herod. And we are told that Herod is so appreciative of this that Herod and Pilate become friends when they had previously, we are told, been enemies. That's an impact that Jesus has on the life of people on the very morning of his death. It's part of his rather rigged, corrupt trial that leads to his unjust execution. Herod gets to see Jesus, in a sense, when the time is really right, when the time really matters. Even in what in effect are his dying hours, Jesus makes his enemies friends. That's a very extraordinary thing, and you need to bear that bit of Luke's Passion account in mind when we hear these curious few verses that talk about Herod and the death of John the Baptist in the middle of this exciting story of Jesus' followers starting to talk about the good news, the life-changing good news of Jesus. As you go about on the streets of Chicago, and probably all the more so wearing a face covering, it may not seem the time to you to stop somebody in the street and overtly talk to them about Jesus. That's not a very Episcopal way of doing things, and I'm not suggesting that we go out and do that right now. But this story is important because it shows that done in the right way, evangelization, talking about the life-changing good news of Jesus and acting it out in our lives, done the right way, the results can be extraordinary, and they can have very far-reaching effects. That's the big message of this subtle, brief 3 verses from Luke's Gospel. Never underestimate the power of the gospel, and let's try and make sure that it is apparent in how we live our lives, and perhaps sometimes even in our conversations. Amen.